Welcome. What is Titan? A no-code platform for Salesforce. What can you do with Titan? You can build forms, portals, document generation, e-signatures, maps, automation, and a lot more. Security is really important to us. Therefore, we are HIPAA compliant, PCI SSC compliant, GDPR 508, and ISO compliant. So, what are you waiting for? Schedule a demo with us at Form Titan and let us build the impossible for Salesforce.
We were just a bunch of nerdy kids who ignored the haters. We took their ridicule and we built on it. And when some of us gave up, well, we built on that too. Built resilience, built on a mission to make things a little better every day until the users came. Then the haters were VCs who scoffed at our audacity. This just isn't the way things are done. But we kept building. Users turned into teams, turned into companies, running their entire businesses on our apps. Then the software giants came after us. We weren't proven, we weren't fully featured, our radical cloud model wasn't secure. But we built on. And today, as companies adopt the cloud to move faster, teams are finding themselves slowed down by each other's efforts. The skeptics are claiming we'll never develop innovation at scale. But now, DevOps have come to the cloud, ushering in a new era of transformation. Companies can release on demand across hundreds of environments, innovating faster with fewer conflicts and fewer disruptions. There will always be challenges. There will always be naysayers. And we'll build on.
So thanks to one and all for joining my session. And today I'll be talking on how you can integrate Slack and Salesforce in 20 minutes without writing any code. So my name is Shruti Sridharan, and I'm a senior Salesforce developer. And I have been working on this platform for almost 5 years now. I have spoken at Dreamforce, IEEE conferences, virtual events like Salesforce APAC, webinars, automation hours, Apex hours, etc. I also lead the local Women in Tech user group and the student user groups. So that's our agenda. We will explore how we can integrate apps without code in Salesforce. Then we will take a look at external services, which is what we will be using to integrate Slack and Salesforce today. I'll then explain the use case followed by a detailed walkthrough and finally wrap it up for Q&A. So what are we going to explore today? We will learn how we can integrate Slack and Salesforce. Now, why do we need to integrate them? So Slack is one of the most popular chat platforms that most of our organizations use today. For example, say imagine you want to announce new opportunities that your organization closed recently. So in other words, instead of sending emails, we will announce it directly on Slack from Salesforce. So how do we integrate? So last week, Salesforce had conducted the Low Code Love event, which mainly explained on how admins and developers can start building apps without writing a lot of code. So today we will be emphasizing the very same idea and see how we can integrate Slack and Salesforce without writing Apex at all. So the key things that we need to remember when we solution integration are one, how can admins easily manage it? Then two, how easily can you deploy it? And three, how easily can you scale it? So external services. How many of you have played with this feature? So this feature is probably less popular, but very powerful. And what's really interesting about it is it can help you to do API integrations without writing a single line of code. And all you need is a file that describes your API, which is called the Swagger, and simply upload it, and there it is, ready to be used. So now, why did we choose external service? Firstly, no Apex. Even admins can build it and manage it very easily. Secondly, it works alongside the flow. Thirdly, it is easily configurable. And lastly, since there is no Apex, you don't have to worry about unit tests at all. So, without further delay, let's quickly take a look at our use case. So, we will be creating a button on the opportunity that, when clicked, would send the details about the opportunity that we want. And we will use Slack Workflow Builder, external services, and flows. So that's it. All right, so let's start building it now. So the first thing you have to do is to open the Slack. Then from the setup, select the workflow builder. So this was a new feature that was released last year. And you can think of it like the workflows in Salesforce used for process automations. So now let me create one and name it as, say, Salesforce announcements. So now, just like you have the evaluation criteria for your workflows in Salesforce, we have something similar in Slack workflows too. So you can specify when you want the Slack workflow to fire, like should it be fired from a shortcut, or should we fire it when someone joins the channel, or maybe when there is an emoji reaction, or so on. And what is really interesting here is the webhook feature. So this means that you can fire the Slack workflow by making a web request, or say a post to a URL that Slack would give you. So let's select that. And you can see, you can read what the URL says. URL will be generated after you publishing the workflow. Now it is next is about setting the variables. So you can also send data to this webhook or URL, and this is achieved by creating variables. So now let me create one, and I'll call it message. Now let me hit done. All right. So now let me click edit. So now all you have to do is to make a post request to the webhook with this data that is shown. Now, what do I do next? Yes. So I want to post something to this channel. So let me click on add. Now let me select Salesforce as my channel. All right, and I can specify what needs to be posted to. So I'll be just selecting the message that I just created, that is a variable, and let me select it. So that is it. Now let me save it. So now let me publish it. So now you can see that there is a URL, and let me keep this tab open. So the next thing is setting up external services in Salesforce. So the external services which will be responsible for making the post request to this webhook. So let me select external services. Sorry, it's about creating a name credential first. So first thing, let me create a name credential first. So here, name credential will be used by Salesforce to understand how Salesforce should authenticate the webhook. And as we all know that webhooks are public, so there is no need of any authentication. So I'll just go ahead and specify the name, the URL, and that's it. So let me just copy this host, and in the name, the credential, let me just paste it. So the identity and the authentication protocols are just anonymous and no authentication. Let me hit save. So now next thing to do is to creating the external service. So let me select external service from the setup, and now let me click on new external service, and I will name it as Slack. Now let me choose my named credential. So now what external service needs is a description of the API or the webhook. So now how do I give this description of this webhook? And for that, you will have to create a Swagger schema for your API. So these are very simple once you get a hang of it. And today, most of the APIs on the internet provide Swagger schema built by default. But in our unfortunately case, we have to create one. And but guess what? I have done that heavy weightlifting for you. So you can visit the GitHub repo, and I have created a template that you can just simply copy. So Swagger schema is nothing but a systematic approach to like explaining what your API is. And here you can specify the host, the scheme, and the different paths. And then you can specify what is the data type that this API accepts. And also specify the structure of data this API accepts. So you can always stop by my blogs, and I have written a lot of them that would help you to master like the external services and the Swagger. So now let me just copy this, and let me now paste this in Salesforce. Now don't forget to change the path here. So let me just copy the path from this Slack and paste it. So this is the path. And let me just paste it here. And I'll click next and register my external service. So that's it. Now, how do I use this external service? And for that, let me create a flow from the setup. So let me start creating a flow. And let me select a screen flow. So the first thing that I will be doing is creating a new resource of type variable, and let me name it as record ID. Sorry. Yes, let me name it as record ID of type text, and let me select it as available for input. And the next thing is, let me select an element get records, and I'll name it as query opportunity and of object opportunity. And let me select the ID, which will be the opportunity ID. And here I'm selecting the variable that I just created, that is the record ID. And let me hit. Now let me just connect them. All right. And now the next thing is, I'll bring in a screen element and label it as compose Slack message. And let me just add in a component called long text area, and I will label it as a message to send, and now make it required, and let me add in some message here. So folks, we won a deal worth. Now let me just select the opportunities related account name, the amount, and let me just frame a message here. Yes. All right. So we have the amount and the opportunity account name selected. All right. So I hit the done button. Now let me just connect them. Now let me add in another element called assignment, and label it as set message. And the variable, I'll be creating a new one and name it as Slack message request. Data type will be apex defined. So when you register an external service, it would automatically create a class here. So now let me just select it here and hit done. Now, what is interesting is the member of the class will be this message node. So let me just choose that here. Message equals to the screen component which I created, that is message to send, and I hit done.
Time check, 2 minutes to go.
Okay, so let me just connect them, and let me just add my action over here, and let me select the type as external service. So this is the external service I just created, and let me name it as send to Slack, and let me include the request here, and I hit done. Now let me just connect them. Let me just connect it and hit save. Now let me activate it. So now the next thing will be for us to create a button. So for that, let me go to the opportunity from my object manager. So let me just create a button which will fire the flow. So here, let me select flow. Let me name it as Slack it. And that's it. So now let me add my button to the layout. Opportunity, page layout. Let me edit it. And my button, here's it. All right. So now let's test it. Let's see how it works. So let me go to the opportunities. Let me select it. And let me click on Slack it. So it would show a message pre-populated, which is really great. Now let me hit next. So there you go. We posted it onto the Slack, which is great. And guess what? We never wrote any code at all. So that's the end of the presentation. Now let's go back to our demo. So here are the resources. So without any doubt, Trailhead is one of the best resources that you can use to learn about everything that we talked today. And I have also written a series of blog of external service. So feel free to stop by my blogs and take a look. Also, I have created a GitHub repo. So feel free to poke it. So now let's move on to the Q&A.
Yep. Thank you, Shruti, for this great session. I'll just quickly wrap up all the Q&As. Most of them are very repetitive ones. So the audience wants to know whether is there any special account needed for accessing the tools on the Slack, where you went into the workflow builder and got the webhooks and everything? And can it work with any kind of additions on the Salesforce side, or does it require only developer account?
Well, there is absolutely no restrictions from the Salesforce side. You can always do it in the free developer edition orgs that we have. And for Slack, you would require a standard class for an enterprise edition.
And do you need to be an admin on that account, or anyone who has access to an enterprise account should be able to get this integrated?
So any organization that has a standard plus or an enterprise edition can actually use the workflow builder. And they don't have to be admins also.
Okay. Can we send automated messages for successful or failure of deployments on Slack?
Absolutely. So right now I just used a button, but you can always fire this from a process builder also.
Okay, we'll take the last question. And if you want to have notifications sent through from multiple objects such as opportunity and lead, what is the most feasible approach in such case? Let's say you want notifications from multiple objects.
Yeah. So in that case, you would have to create multiple processes. So one process for lead and the other process for opportunity. And this can still fire the flows. We could actually have the external service.
Okay. Yeah, I see a lot of different scenarios being popped up. I think in the interest of time, can we take these questions offline? And Shruti, if you can answer those queries through your social channels, through Twitter or through LinkedIn or through your blogs, right? That would be great. And for the resources slide that was mentioned in your that would also be posted through, if Shruti, if you can post it out through your channels, that would be great. And for the recording of the session, this will be available post the event after a few weeks, so that you can go through the recording and revisit these concepts. So that's all. Thank you, Shruti, for this great session.